How do you rebuild when your own daughter takes your life's work and calls it business? What happens when you hit rock bottom at 49, and the only thing left is a storage locker your father paid for years ago? Why did he leave an envelope that said, "Open when you have nothing left"? My name is Desmond Kellan, and I'm 49 years old. I built my consulting firm from nothing. Operations and compliance work for mid-sized companies that needed someone who actually understood how systems break before they fail. I started in a rented office above a print shop, spent 15 years turning careful work into steady clients, and raised my daughter around filing cabinets and late-night conference calls. I thought I was teaching her how to build something that lasts. I was wrong. The morning it started, I didn't recognize it as an ending. I walked into the office open area with my usual coffee, cheap, black from the bodega 2 blocks over, and saw my daughter Mireya standing near the central desk with her new husband Vaughn. She wore a charcoal suit I'd never seen before, and her hair was pulled back in that severe style she'd adopted after the wedding. Vaughn stood beside her in a navy blazer, hands in his pockets, looking like he owned the building. "Morning, Dad," Mireya said, but her eyes didn't follow the greeting. They stayed on her phone. I nodded to the staff scattered around their desks. Thomas, our office manager, gave me a strange look, apologetic maybe, or worried. Lena, who'd worked with me for 8 years, wouldn't meet my eyes at all. "We're meeting in the conference room at 9, Vaughn said. Not asked, said. "About what?" I set my coffee down on my desk, the same desk I'd used since year 2, scratched and solid. "Leadership alignment," Mireya answered, still looking at her phone. "We've been talking to the team about modernizing our approach." Our approach. As if she'd been here from the beginning. As if the all-nighters and the missed school plays and the years of building trust with clients had been a collective effort instead of my spine holding everything up. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I didn't argue. I just nodded and watched them walk toward the glass conference room like they were heading into a boardroom they'd conquered, not the space where I'd spent a decade solving other people's problems. The conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the rest of the office. Everyone could see in. That was the point, I realized later. They wanted witnesses. I sat at my usual spot, middle of the table, facing the door. Mireya took the head of the table. Vaughn stood beside her, one hand resting on the back of her chair like he was posing for a portrait. "So," Vaughn began, "we've been doing some analysis of the firm's trajectory." He said trajectory like he was hosting a TED Talk. "And the reality is, we're not positioned for the kind of growth that today's market demands." I looked at Mireya. She was nodding along, her face smooth and certain. "The clients we have are loyal," Vaughn continued, "but loyalty doesn't scale. We need to rebrand, restructure, and honestly, reframe our value proposition." Reframe our value proposition. I'd been keeping companies compliant and operational for 15 years. I didn't need to reframe anything. "What kind of restructure?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "Primarily leadership," Vaughn said. "Clients respond to energy, to vision. Right now the firm feels—" He paused, like he was choosing his words carefully. "Traditional." Traditional. He meant old. He meant me. "Mireya and I have been building relationships with some key decision-makers in our network," Vaughn went on. "People want to work with leaders who understand where the industry is going, not where it's been." I looked at my daughter, 26 years old, smart, capable, raised around this work. But standing there in that suit, nodding along while her husband erased me in real time, she looked like a stranger. "This is my firm," I said quietly. "It's our firm," Mireya corrected. "You brought me in. You gave me access. You said you wanted me to have a future here." She wasn't wrong. I had given her access to accounts, to clients, to the internal systems. I'd been proud to do it. I thought I was building a legacy. Vaughn's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, smiled slightly, and looked back at me. We've scheduled a staff meeting for this afternoon. Just to check in, nothing formal, but we wanted to give you a heads up. A heads up about what? About the messaging, Mireya said. People need to know the firm is evolving, that we're moving forward. I stood up. My chair scraped against the floor, loud in the glass box. Through the windows, I could see Thomas pretending to work at his computer. Lena had her back to us. I'll be at the meeting, I said. Vaughn smiled. Of course, you're always welcome. Always welcome. In my own office. I walked out of the conference room and back to my desk. My phone sat next to my cold coffee. I picked it up, unlocked it, and opened my calendar. There was a new event scheduled for 3 o'clock. Leadership alignment. Full team. I hadn't created it. I scrolled through my app permissions. Mireya had admin access. She'd had it for 6 months, since I'd added her as a co-owner on the business accounts. I'd done it because I trusted her, because I wanted her to feel like this was hers too. I sat down and opened my laptop. My email was full of threads I wasn't copied on, meeting notes I hadn't seen, client updates from Vaughn, signed with the firm's name but not mine. My hands didn't shake. I'm not that kind of person. But something in my chest went cold and tight, like a fist closing around my lungs. At 3 o'clock, the staff gathered in the open area. 15 people. Some I'd hired, some Mireya had brought in over the past year. Vaughn stood at the front, Mireya beside him, both of them smiling and confident. Thanks for taking the time, Vaughn said. We know everyone's busy, so we'll keep this short. The firm is growing, and with growth comes change. Mireya and I have been working on a strategy to position us for the next phase, and part of that means empowering new leadership. Empowering new leadership, code for sidelining the old. We're going to be restructuring roles over the next few months, Mireya added. Nothing drastic, just refining who's responsible for what. Desmond will still be involved, of course, but we want to make sure the client-facing work is aligned with the brand we're building. Client-facing work. I'd built every client relationship in this firm. We're also exploring some operational changes, Vaughn said. Streamlining expenses, reallocating resources, that kind of thing. We want to be lean and competitive. Streamlining expenses. I knew what that meant. I took less pay during bad years so the staff could keep their salaries. I paid out of pocket when budgets were tight. I made sacrifices because I believed in keeping promises. Any questions? Vaughn asked, scanning the room. No one spoke, but I saw Lena's jaw tighten. I saw Thomas shift his weight, uncomfortable. I didn't ask a question. I just stood there, watching my daughter and her husband perform a takeover in slow motion, and I realized that fighting it in front of everyone would only make me look desperate. So I stayed quiet. After the meeting, I went to my car. The parking garage was cold and fluorescent lit, and my sedan looked small and tired between 2 glossy SUVs. I sat in the driver's seat with the engine off and stared at the concrete wall in front of me. My phone buzzed. A notification from the bank app. I opened it. There was a transaction labeled Operating Sweep, Primary to Reserve. $42,000 had moved from the operating account to a reserve account I didn't recognize. I checked the approvals. Authorized by Desmond Kellan. Executed by Vaughn Sorrell. I sat there in the cold garage, holding my phone, watching the numbers on the screen that proved I was losing my company piece by piece. And I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't call my daughter and demand answers. I just sat there and felt the floor drop out from under 15 years of work. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table with a stack of old bills and a calculator, trying to figure out how long I could last if this kept happening. The house was quiet. My younger son Callum was at college 3 states away, and my ex-wife had been gone for years. It was just me and the hum of the refrigerator and the weight of realizing I'd been set up by my own daughter. I thought about the years after her mother left. Mireya was 12. I worked from home as much as I could, brought her to the office when I couldn't, let her sit in the corner during client calls. She used to draw on the back of compliance reports and ask me what operational efficiency meant. I thought I was showing her how to build something real. Now she was 26, married to a man who talked like a motivational poster, and they were methodically erasing me from the business I built. I made coffee at 4 a.m. and opened my laptop. I pulled up every contract, every account statement, every admin log I still had access to. I started building a timeline. 6 months ago, Mireya married Vaughn. He'd been in sales, tech startups, vague titles, a LinkedIn profile full of buzzwords. He had charm and a good suit, and the kind of confidence that made people forget to ask hard questions. 5 months ago, Mireya asked me to add Vaughn as a consultant to the firm. He has ideas, she said. He could help us grow. I said yes, because I wanted to support her marriage. 4 months ago, Vaughn started sitting in on client meetings. He didn't do the work, he didn't know how, but he shook hands and made promises and acted like the firm's success was inevitable. 3 months ago, Mireya asked me to give her full admin access to the accounts. For efficiency, she said, so we can move faster. I said yes, because I trusted her. 2 months ago, vendors started calling me to confirm new payment terms. I didn't know what they were talking about. When I asked Mireya, she said Vaughn was optimizing cash flow. 1 month ago, I stopped getting copied on client emails. And now, this week, they were holding meetings without me, moving money without my approval, and talking about me like I was a problem to be solved. I wrote it all down: dates, names, amounts. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet, but I needed to see the pattern in front of me. At 7, my phone rang. It was Thomas. "Desmond," he said, and his voice was tight. "I think you should know. There's a staff group chat. Mireya started it last week. You're not in it. What are they saying? That you're resistant to change, that you're holding the firm back. Vaughn's been pushing the narrative that clients want younger leadership." I closed my eyes. Are people believing it? "Some are," Tomas said. "The newer hires mostly, the ones Mireya brought in. But Lena and I, we know what's happening. We've been here long enough to see it." "Thanks for telling me. What are you going to do?" I didn't have an answer yet, so I just said, "I'll figure it out." I went into the office late that morning. The open area was full of people working, typing, talking on phones. No one looked up when I walked in. It was like I was already a ghost. I sat at my desk and opened my email. There was a calendar invite for a meeting I hadn't scheduled. Client strategy session, Mireya, Vaughn, senior accounts. I wasn't invited. I walked over to Lena's desk. She looked up, startled. "Can we talk?" I asked quietly. She glanced around, then nodded. We went to the small break room in the back, away from the glass walls. "They're cutting you out," Lena said before I could ask. "It's not subtle. Vaughn's been telling clients that the firm is under new direction. He's positioning himself and Mireya as the leadership team." "What are the clients saying?" "Most of them are polite, but a few have asked me directly what's going on. They've worked with you for years, they're confused." "And what do you tell them?" "The truth," Lena said. "That you're still here, still running the work. But Vaughn's louder, and people respond to confidence, even when it's unearned." I leaned against the counter. "I gave her everything. I thought I was building something for her." "You were," Lena said, "but somewhere along the way, she decided she deserved it more than you." That afternoon, I went to the bank, not my usual branch, the downtown one where the business accounts were managed. I asked to speak with the relationship manager, a man named Rowan Dace, who I'd worked with for years. He greeted me with a professional smile and gestured to a chair in his office. "What can I help you with, Desmond?" "I need to understand some transactions," I said. "There was a transfer yesterday, $42,000. I didn't authorize it." Rowan pulled up the account on his computer. His face stayed neutral. According to the records, the transfer was authorized by Kellan. She has full admin privileges on the account. I know, but I'm still the primary account holder. Doesn't that mean anything? It means you're both authorized to make decisions, Rowan said carefully. If there's a dispute, that's something you'd need to resolve internally or through legal channels. From the bank's perspective, the transaction was legitimate. So she can just move money around and I can't stop it? Not without changing the account structure, Rowan said, which would require her consent since she's a co-owner. I sat there, feeling the walls close in. I'd set up the account structure to include her because I wanted her to feel like a partner. Now it was the mechanism she was using to dismantle me. Is there anything else I can help with? Rowan asked. I shook my head and left. Back at the office, I found a printed page on the communal printer. It was new letterhead. The firm's name was the same, but under it, in clean modern font, it said, Leadership, Kellan, Von Sorrell. My name wasn't there. I picked up the page and folded it into my pocket. That night, I sat at my kitchen table again and pulled out an old file box from the closet. It was full of papers from my father's estate. He'd been gone for 3 years. A quiet man, a planner, someone who believed in preparing for the worst. Among the documents was a single piece of paper, a receipt for a storage unit, prepaid for 10 years. I'd never gone to check it. I'd been too busy building the firm, too busy trying to hold my family together. I stared at the receipt. Unit 347, Northside Storage, paid in full until 2027. My phone buzzed. Another notification. Your access has been changed on the following systems: client database, financial dashboard, internal calendar. I set the phone down and looked at the storage receipt again. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than defeat. I felt curious. The next morning, I tried to log into the client database. Access denied. I tried the financial dashboard. Access denied. I opened my calendar and found half my recurring meetings had been deleted. I wasn't locked out completely, not yet, but the message was clear. I was being erased one permission at a time. I didn't go to the office. Instead, I drove to the bank again. This time, I didn't ask for Rowan. I just went to a teller and withdrew $500 in cash from my personal account. Then I sat in my car and looked at the storage facility address on my phone. Northside Storage was 20 minutes outside the city, tucked behind a strip mall and a tire shop. The building was low and gray, with roll-up doors stretching down long corridors. The air smelled like rust and old cardboard. I found the office, a small room with a desk and a clerk who looked half asleep. Unit number? He asked without looking up. 347. He typed something into his computer. Paid up through 2027. You need access? Yes. He handed me a key card and pointed down the hall. 3rd corridor, left side. I walked through the maze of units until I found 347. The lock was old, but solid. I swiped the card and the mechanism clicked open. The door rolled up with a metallic screech. Inside was a 10 by 10 space, mostly empty except for a few cardboard boxes stacked against the back wall and a metal filing cabinet in the corner. Everything was covered in a thin layer of dust. I stepped inside and pulled the door down behind me. The space went dim, lit only by a single bulb overhead. I opened the first box. Old tools, wrenches, screwdrivers, things my father had used in his workshop. I opened the second box. Books, records, a few framed photos of my mother. The third box was different. Inside was a large envelope, sealed with tape and labeled in my father's handwriting. Open when you have nothing left. I held it in both hands. It was heavy, like there was more than paper inside. I didn't open it. Not yet. I just sat down on the cold concrete floor and stared at it. My father had been a machinist, a careful man who built things that lasted. He didn't talk much. didn't give advice unless you asked. But he was always 3 steps ahead, always preparing for the next breakdown. He'd set this up. He'd paid for this unit years in advance. He'd left me something for the worst day. And I realized, sitting there in the dust and the dim light, that this was the worst day. I left the storage unit without opening the envelope and drove to a diner on the edge of town. I sat in a corner booth with bad coffee and a notebook, and I started writing everything down again. Not just dates and transactions this time, names, patterns, who said what and when. Mireya had started distancing herself from me a year ago, right after she met Vaughn. She stopped asking my opinion, stopped coming to the house for dinners, stopped talking about the firm like it was something we built together. Vaughn had moved fast. He'd made himself indispensable to her, convinced her that the firm could be bigger, better, if they were in charge. He'd used her resentment, the late nights, the modest living, the years of watching me work instead of getting rich, and turned it into fuel. And now they were taking everything. I thought about the staff. The ones who'd been there from the beginning knew what was happening. Lena had said as much. Tomas was scared but loyal. But the newer hires, the ones Mireya and Vaughn had brought in, they believed the story. They thought I was the obstacle. I finished the coffee and left cash on the table. Next, I drove to the public library. I found a computer station in the back and logged into my personal email, not the firm account, which I knew they were monitoring. I pulled up old client contracts, vendor agreements, anything I'd saved over the years. I started printing, page by page, document by document. I didn't know what I'd need yet, but I knew I needed proof of what I'd built. After 2 hours, I had a stack of paper an inch thick. I paid for the prints in cash and left. That afternoon, I went to see Hamid Ozer, the accountant who'd handled my firm's books for the past decade. His office was small and cluttered, stacks of files everywhere, the smell of stale coffee and old paper. "Desmond," Hamid said, looking surprised. "I didn't know you were coming in." "I need to ask you something," I said. "And I need you to be honest." He gestured to a chair. I sat down. "Something's off with the numbers," I said. "The transfers, the expenses, they don't make sense. I need to know if you've seen anything unusual." Hamid hesitated. He adjusted his glasses. "I've been getting requests from Mireya and Vaughn to restructure some of the accounts. They said it was for tax optimization." "What kind of restructuring?" "Moving funds into reserve accounts, setting up new LLCs. It's all technically legal, but..." He paused. "It's aggressive, and it's fast. How much are we talking about?" Hamid pulled up a file on his computer. His face was grim. "Over the past 3 months, close to $2 million have moved through accounts you don't have direct access to." I felt my chest tighten. $2 million? "That's just what I've seen in the filings," Hamid said. "If there are other transactions going through channels I'm not tracking, it could be more." "Why didn't you tell me?" "I tried," Hamid said quietly. "I sent you an email last month. You didn't respond." I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my email. The message wasn't there. I checked the spam folder. Nothing. "They're filtering my email," I said. Hamid didn't look surprised. "Desmond, I don't know what's going on between you and your daughter, but from a financial perspective, this looks like a controlled extraction. They're moving assets, restructuring ownership, and positioning themselves to take control. Can you help me trace it?" "I can try," Hamid said, "but I need access to the accounts. And if they've locked you out..." "Then I'll find another way," I said. I left Hamid's office and sat in my car, staring at the dashboard. $2 million, maybe more. My daughter and her husband were systematically dismantling my firm and taking everything they could carry. I thought about calling her. I thought about showing up at her house and demanding answers, but I knew it wouldn't matter. She'd made her choice. She'd chosen Vaughn, chosen the story he was selling, chosen to believe I was the problem. So instead, I drove to an old workshop on the south side of town. It was the place where my father used to work, fixing machinery and keeping records in a cluttered back office. The building was still there, though it had changed hands twice since he'd gone. I walked in and asked for the owner. A man in his 60s came out, grease on his hands, a wary look on his face. "I'm Desmond Kellan," I said. "My father was Orrin Kellan. He used to work here." The man's expression changed. "Orrin's boy?" "Yes." He wiped his hands on a rag. "Your father was a good man, taught me half of what I know." He paused. "What brings you here?" "I'm trying to understand something," I said. "My father left me a storage unit. It's been paid for years ahead. There's an envelope inside with instructions." The man nodded slowly. Orrin always had a plan. He used to say, "You don't fix a machine after it breaks. You prepare for the breakdown before it happens." "Did he ever talk to you about me? About my business?" "He was proud of you," the man said. "But he was worried too. He said you were too trusting, that you'd give someone the keys before you checked if they'd lock you out." I felt something crack in my chest. He knew this would happen? "He didn't know," the man said, "but he prepared for it anyway." That was Orrin, always 3 steps ahead. I thanked him and left. That night, I sat in my kitchen with the envelope from the storage unit on the table in front of me. I didn't open it. I just stared at it, feeling the weight of everything my father had tried to protect me from. My phone buzzed. Another notification. "Your access has been changed on the following systems: payroll dashboard, vendor portal." I set the phone down and picked up the envelope. I broke the seal. Inside the envelope was a single piece of paper, folded once. I opened it and read 9 words written in my father's steady handwriting. "The firm was always mine. Take it back today." Under the words was a small brass key. I sat there at my kitchen table, staring at the paper, trying to understand what it meant. The firm was always his? I'd built it. I'd started it with a loan and a rented office and 15 years of sweat. My father had been gone 3 years before I even launched the consulting work, but he'd left this. He'd planned for this exact moment. I picked up the key. It was old, heavy, with a number stamped on it, 1288. I didn't know what it opened, but I knew my father didn't leave things to chance. I folded the paper carefully, put it back in the envelope with the key, and set it aside. Then I opened my laptop and started working. I pulled up every document I'd printed at the library, every contract, every client agreement. I cross-referenced them with my notes from Hamid, the accountant. I built a timeline of every transaction I could trace. 3 months ago, a new LLC was created, KS Ventures. The initials matched Maria's married name and Vaughn's last name. 2 months ago, client payments started being routed through KS Ventures before landing in the firm's main account. 1 month ago, the reserve account I didn't have access to started receiving regular transfers, always just under $50,000, always labeled operational reserve. I added it up. If the pattern held, they'd moved at least $4 million through accounts I couldn't see. But Hamid had said $2 million, which meant there were transactions even he didn't know about. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. This wasn't just sloppy. This was deliberate, structured, planned. Vaughn knew what he was doing, and Maria had signed off on all of it. At 2 a.m, I got a text from Thomas. "They're scheduling an all-staff meeting tomorrow, 10 a.m. They're calling it a transition briefing." I didn't respond. I just kept working. By the time the sun came up, I had a folder full of documents, a list of names, and a clear picture of how they'd done it. Now I needed to figure out what the key opened. I didn't go to the office for the 10 o'clock meeting. Instead, I drove back to the storage facility and went to Unit 347. I pulled the door up and looked at the filing cabinet in the corner. It had a lock, old brass, with a keyhole that looked like it matched the key my father had left. I slid the key in. It turned smoothly. The cabinet opened. Inside were 3 folders, neatly labeled. The first folder was titled, Ownership Structure, Desmond Kellan Consulting. I opened it. The documents inside were legal filings, articles of incorporation, shareholder agreements, trust documents. I scanned through them, my hands shaking. My father had been a silent partner. He'd invested in the firm at the very beginning, a small amount, just enough to be listed as a founding shareholder. I'd forgotten about it. It had seemed like a gesture, a way for him to support me without interfering. But the shareholder agreement had clauses, specific conditions. If the primary operator, me, was removed or undermined by another shareholder, control would revert to the original founding structure. And according to the trust documents, my father's shares had been held in a trust that named me as the sole beneficiary upon his passing, which meant legally I still controlled the firm. Mireya and Vaughn had admin access, but they didn't have ownership, not the kind that mattered in a courtroom. The second folder was titled Financial Tracking. Inside were copies of account statements, wire transfer records, and transaction logs, all dated within the past 6 months. My father hadn't created these, but someone had. Someone had been watching, documenting, building a trail. I checked the initials at the bottom of the logs. H.O. Hamid Ozer, the accountant. He'd been tracking everything, not just the $2 million he'd told me about, all of it. According to the logs, the total amount moved out of the firm's accounts and into KS Ventures was $6.3 million. I sat down on the concrete floor and read the numbers again. $6.3 million. The third folder was titled Instructions. Inside was a checklist, written in my father's handwriting. It was simple, methodical, the way he approached everything. Step 1, verify ownership documents. Step 2, secure financial records. Step 3, notify the bank and freeze unauthorized accounts. Step 4, inform clients of the true ownership structure. Step 5, present evidence in a public, professional setting where it cannot be ignored or dismissed. At the bottom of the checklist, my father had written one more line. Do not fight them in private. They will lie. Fight them in front of witnesses. I sat there in the storage unit, surrounded by dust and old boxes, holding the roadmap my father had left me. He'd known. Not the details, not the specifics, but he'd known that someday someone would try to take what I'd built, and he'd prepared for it. I stood up, gathered the folders, and locked the cabinet. Then I drove to a copy shop and made duplicates of everything. I put the originals in a safe deposit box at a bank across town, not the one where Rowan worked, not anywhere Mireya or Vaughn could access. Next, I called Hamid. I found it, I said. The ownership documents. You were right. They've been moving money, but they don't actually control the firm. What are you going to do? Hamid asked. What my father told me to do, I said. I'm going to fight them in front of witnesses. That afternoon, I made 3 calls. The first was to a corporate attorney named Celine Crowell. I didn't know her personally, but her name had been referenced in one of my father's documents. When I called, she picked up on the second ring. Ms. Crowell, I said, my name is Desmond Kellan. I believe my father may have worked with you on some estate planning. There was a pause. Then she said, Oren Kellan's son? Yes. I've been expecting your call, she said. When can you come in? The second call was to Briar Shu, the procurement lead at one of our largest clients. She'd worked with me for 8 years, and I knew she valued stability over flash. Briar, I said, I need to talk to you about some changes at the firm. I've been hearing things, Briar said carefully. Vaughn's been reaching out. He says the firm is going in a new direction. It's not, I said, and I need you to know the truth. Can we meet? When? Tomorrow. I'll make time, she said. The third call was to the organizer of the annual Industry Summit, a large networking event where clients, vendors, and consultants gathered to talk shop. It was scheduled for 2 weeks out. I'd like to reserve a presentation slot, I said. What's the topic? The organizer asked. Ownership, accountability, and what happens when trust is broken, I said. There was a pause. That's a heavy topic. It's a heavy story, I said, but it's one people need to hear. I'll put you down, the organizer said. Ballroom A, Friday afternoon. I hung up and stared at my calendar. 2 weeks. I had 2 weeks to prepare, to organize, to build a case that couldn't be dismissed. I thought about calling Maria. I thought about telling her I knew what she'd done, giving her a chance to stop. But I remembered my father's last instruction. Do not fight them in private. So I didn't call. I just kept working. That night I sat at my kitchen table and pulled up the staff group chat that Thomas had told me about. I couldn't access it directly, but Lena had sent me screenshots. Vaughn had written, Desmond's resistant to change. We need to move forward without him. Mireya had written, he built something good, but he doesn't understand what it takes to scale. Someone else, Nia Volker, the new PR hire, had written, should we be worried about him interfering? Vaughn's response, no, he's not a problem anymore. I closed the screenshots and opened a new document. I titled it, Presentation, Industry Summit. Then I started writing. The next 2 weeks moved like a slow countdown. I didn't go to the office. I didn't call Mireya. I just worked, quietly and methodically, building the case that would undo everything they'd done. I met with Celine Crowell, the attorney, in her downtown office. She was in her mid-40s, sharp-eyed and direct. Your father retained me 5 years ago, she said, sliding a folder across the desk. He wanted to make sure the ownership structure of your firm was protected. He said you were too trusting. He was right, I said. The documents are solid, Celine said. Mireya has admin access, but she doesn't have controlling interest. The shareholder agreement stipulates that any attempt to transfer ownership or dissolve the entity without your consent is void. Can she challenge it? She can try, Celine said. But the trust documents are airtight. Your father made sure of that. I looked at the folder. Why didn't he tell me? He said you'd figure it out when you needed to, Celine said. He didn't want to interfere unless it was necessary. It's necessary now, I said. Then let's make sure you're ready. We spent 3 hours going through every document, every clause, every piece of evidence I'd gathered. By the end, Celine had a plan. We'll notify the bank first, she said. Freeze the accounts tied to the unauthorized transfers. Then we'll issue a formal notice to Mireya and Vaughn that they're operating outside their legal authority. What if they fight back? They will, Celine said. But by the time they realize what's happening, it'll be too late. I met with Briar Shu at a quiet coffee shop near her office. She arrived on time, professional as always, but I could see the concern in her face. Desmond? She said, sitting down. What's going on? I told her. Not everything, not the numbers, not the specifics, but enough. I told her that Mireya and Vaughn had been operating outside their authority, that they'd been moving money and misleading clients, and that I was taking steps to restore order. Briar listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, I've been working with you for 8 years. I trust you. But I need to know, is this firm stable? It will be, I said. But I wanted you to hear it from me, not from them. I appreciate that, Briar said. And for what it's worth, Vaughn's pitch didn't sit right with me. He talks a good game, but he doesn't have your depth. Will you stay with us? If you're in control? Yes, Briar said. If they are? No. I shook her hand and left. Over the next week, I worked with Hamid to finalize the financial trail. He pulled every transaction log, every transfer record, every document that showed how the money had moved. It's all here, Hamid said, handing me a thick binder. $6.3 million routed through KS Ventures, then dispersed into personal accounts and investments. It's textbook embezzlement. Can we prove it was intentional? The approvals have their signatures. Hamid said. And the timing matches exactly with when you started losing access. That's not a coincidence. I took the binder and added it to the stack of evidence in my safe deposit box. 3 days before the summit, I got a call from Thomas. Desmond, he said, his voice tight. They're planning something. Mireya and Vaughn are going to the summit too. They're giving a presentation. The future of agile consulting. They're positioning themselves as the next generation of leadership. Good, I said. Good? Thomas sounded confused. Let them build the stage, I said. I'll use it when they're done. The night before the summit, I sat in my kitchen and reviewed everything one last time. The ownership documents, the financial records, the witness statements from Lena and Thomas, the client confirmations from Breyer. Everything was in order. I thought about my father. I thought about the hours he'd spent planning for a disaster he'd never see, building a safety net for a son he'd always believed in. I thought about Mireya, the little girl who used to sit in my office, drawing on the back of reports, asking me to explain what compliance meant. I thought about how trust becomes a weapon when you give it to the wrong person. And I thought about the moment, 2 weeks away, when I'd walk into that ballroom and take everything back. I didn't sleep much that night, but when the sun came up, I was ready. I put on a clean suit, not flashy, just solid and professional. I packed the binders into a leather case. I double-checked my calendar, Ballroom A, 2 p.m., presentation slot reserved. Then I drove to the hotel where the summit was being held. The lobby was full of consultants and vendors, all networking, shaking hands, performing success. I checked in at the registration desk and got my badge. I walked through the exhibit hall, past booths and banners, past people who used to know my name but didn't recognize me anymore. I found Ballroom A. The doors were closed, but I could hear voices inside. A presentation was underway. I waited in the hallway, my case at my feet, my hands steady. At 1:30, the doors opened. People filed out, chatting, checking phones. I walked in. The ballroom was massive, tiered seating, a stage at the front, projection screens on either side. There were maybe 200 people scattered through the rows. And at the front, setting up for their presentation, were Mireya and Vaughn. They saw me. Mireya's face went pale. Vaughn's jaw tightened. I walked down the aisle and took a seat in the third row, directly in their line of sight. Then I waited. Vaughn recovered first. He always did. He flashed a smile, adjusted his lapel, and turned to the AV tech like nothing had changed. Mireya stood frozen for a moment, staring at me, before she looked away and busied herself with her notes. The room filled quickly. Vendors, clients, consultants, people I'd worked with for years, people who'd stopped returning my calls, people who didn't know the truth yet. I saw Breyer Shu sit down 4 rows back. She gave me a small nod. I saw Lena and Thomas slip in near the side exit, both of them tense. At 2 o'clock, the moderator took the stage. Good afternoon, everyone. Our next session is The Future of Agile Consulting, presented by Mireya Kellan and Vaughn Sorrell from Kellan Consulting Group. Applause. Not loud but polite, professional. Vaughn stepped up to the microphone, confident, smooth, like he was born for this. Thank you all for being here, he said. Today we want to talk about what it means to evolve, to move past outdated models and embrace a new era of leadership. He clicked to the first slide. It was a graph showing projected growth, all clean lines and optimistic angles. The consulting industry is changing, Vaughn continued. Clients don't just want compliance anymore. They want vision. They want energy. They want leaders who understand where the market is going, not where it's been. I sat still, watching. Mireya stepped forward. When I joined my father's firm, I saw potential, but I also saw limitations, old processes, risk-averse thinking, a reluctance to scale. She didn't look at me. She looked at the crowd, her voice steady. So we made changes, Mireya said. We restructured. We brought in new talent. We repositioned the firm for growth. Growth. She said it like it was a good thing, like taking $6.3 million and calling it vision was progress. Vaughn advanced the slide. We're not just consultants, we're partners. We're invested in our clients' success because we're building something that lasts. The presentation went on for 20 minutes. Charts, buzzwords, stories about transformation. They painted themselves as innovators, as the future, as the people who saved the firm from stagnation. They didn't mention my name, not once. When they finished, there was applause, a little stronger this time. A few people nodded, impressed. Vaughn smiled. "We're happy to take questions." A hand went up in the back. Someone asked about their methodology. Vaughn answered smoothly, confidently. Another hand. Someone asked about client retention. Mireya handled it, talking about relationships and trust. I didn't raise my hand. I just waited. Finally, the moderator thanked them and moved to wrap up the session. I stood. The room went quiet. People turned to look. Vaughn's smile faltered. Mireya's eyes widened. I walked down the aisle, carrying my leather case, and stopped at the base of the stage. "I'd like to add some context," I said, my voice calm, clear. The moderator hesitated. "I'm sorry, this session is—" "I'm Desmond Kellan," I said, looking at the crowd. "I founded the firm they just talked about, and I think people deserve to know the truth." Vaughn stepped forward. "This isn't the time or place, it's exactly the time and place," I said. I looked at the moderator. "I reserved the next slot, 2:30, Ballroom A." The moderator checked his tablet, surprised. "You're right, you're listed." "Then I'll wait," I said. I turned and walked back to my seat. The room was silent. Mireya and Vaughn left the stage quickly, whispering to each other, their faces tight. At 2:30, the moderator took the microphone again. "Our next presenter is Desmond Kellan, speaking on—" He paused, reading the title. "Ownership, Accountability, and the Cost of Trust." I stood and walked to the stage. I set my case on the table and opened it. Inside were 3 binders: evidence, documents, proof. I looked out at the crowd. 200 faces, some curious, some uncomfortable, some already skeptical. I saw Mireya and Vaughn sitting in the back row now, their arms crossed, their expressions hard. I took a breath. 15 years ago, I began, I started a consulting firm with a loan and a rented office. I built it carefully. I kept my promises. I treated clients with respect and staff with fairness. It wasn't flashy, but it worked. I clicked to the first slide. It was a photo of the original office, small, cluttered, real. 3 years ago, my father passed away. He left me a storage unit. Inside was an envelope with instructions and a key. I didn't open it until 2 weeks ago. I clicked to the next slide. The 9-word note from my father. "The firm was always mine. Take it back today." The room was silent. "My father had been a silent partner from the beginning," I said. "A founding shareholder. I'd forgotten about it because he never interfered. But he set up a legal structure that protected the firm from exactly what happened next." I clicked again. Ownership documents appeared on the screen. 6 months ago, my daughter and her husband began repositioning themselves as the leadership of my firm. They told staff I was outdated. They told clients I was holding the company back. They moved money, restructured accounts, and systematically locked me out of my own business. I clicked to the financial summary. Over 3 months, they transferred $6.3 million out of the firm's operating accounts into a separate LLC they controlled. They did it in increments, always just under reporting thresholds, always with approvals that looked legitimate. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. I clicked again. Transaction logs appeared, line by line, showing dates, amounts, approvals. "These are the records," I said. "Every transfer, every authorization, every signature, all of it tracked by the firm's accountant, who noticed the pattern and documented everything. Vaughn stood up in the back. "This is slander." "It's documentation," I said, not raising my voice. "And it's all been submitted to the appropriate authorities." Mireya's face had gone white. I clicked to the next slide. The ownership agreement, highlighted. "According to the shareholder structure my father set up, any attempt to transfer ownership or dissolve the firm without my explicit consent is void." Mireya and Vaughn had admin access, but they didn't have control. I clicked again. A letter from Celine Crowell's firm appeared. Formal, legal, undeniable. "As of this morning, all accounts tied to unauthorized transfers have been frozen. The bank has been notified. Clients have been informed of the true ownership structure, and the firm is being restored to its original operational control." The room was dead silent now. I looked at Mireya. She was staring at the screen, her hands trembling. I looked at Vaughn. His jaw was clenched, his face red. "I didn't come here for revenge," I said. "I came here because my father taught me something important. If someone tries to take what you built, don't fight them in private. Fight them in front of witnesses." I clicked to the final slide. It was blank except for one line. "The firm was always mine, and it still is." I closed the binder and looked out at the crowd. "That's all," I said. For a moment, no one moved. Then, someone in the middle row started clapping. Slowly, others joined. Not everyone. Some people looked uncomfortable, some looked away, but enough. Briar Shue stood and walked out, pulling out her phone. I knew she was calling her team, confirming what I'd said. Lena and Thomas were smiling, both of them looking relieved, and in the back row, Mireya stood abruptly and walked toward the exit. Vaughn followed her, his face dark. I stepped off the stage and walked to my seat. My phone buzzed. A notification from the bank. "Account status updated. Primary control restored. Desmond Kellan." Another buzz. A text from Celine. "Compliance confirmed the holds. Everything's in place." Another buzz. A message from Briar. "We're staying with you. Let's schedule a call Monday." I sat down and watched the room empty slowly. People whispered, glanced at me, processed what they'd just seen. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just sat there, feeling the weight lift. My father had been right. You don't fix a machine after it breaks. You prepare for the breakdown before it happens. And when the moment comes, you don't hesitate. You take it back. I stayed in the ballroom until it was nearly empty. A few people approached me, some to shake my hand, some to ask questions, some just to stand there awkwardly before walking away. I answered when I needed to, nodded when I didn't. Tomas found me near the exit. "Desmond, I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," I told him. "Just show up Monday. We have work to do." "They're really gone?" "They're done," I said. "The accounts are frozen. The bank's been notified. Clients have the truth. They can fight it if they want, but they won't win." Tomas nodded slowly. "People are going to talk about this for a long time." "Let them talk," I said. "I'm not here for reputation. I'm here to finish what I started." Lena was waiting in the hallway when I walked out. She looked tired, but relieved. "I knew you had something planned," she said. "I just didn't know it would be that thorough." "My father taught me to prepare for the worst," I said. Turns out, he was right. What happens to Mireya? I stopped walking. That's not my decision anymore. She made her choices. Now she has to live with them. Lena nodded. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry it came to this." "So am I," said. I left the hotel and drove back to my house. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the empty street. I parked in the driveway and sat there for a moment, my hand still on the wheel. My phone buzzed, a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. I played it. "Mr. Kellan, this is Rowan Dace from the bank. I wanted to inform you that we've completed the audit of the flagged accounts. The total amount in question is $6.3 million, as you indicated. We've initiated a full review and have notified the appropriate regulatory agencies. You'll receive formal documentation within 48 hours. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. I deleted the voicemail and went inside. The house was quiet. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and opened my laptop. My email was full. Messages from clients, from vendors, from people I hadn't heard from in months. Some were supportive, some were cautious, some were just asking what happened. I answered the important ones. Short, professional, to the point. The firm is stable. I'm back in control. Business as usual starting Monday. At 9 p.m. my phone rang. It was a number I recognized. Callum, my younger son. Dad? His voice was uncertain. I saw something online. About Mireia. Is it true? I closed my eyes. Yes. She really took money from the firm? She and Vaughn, yes. There was a long pause. Why would she do that? I don't know, I said. Maybe she convinced herself it was justified. Maybe she thought I wouldn't notice. Or maybe she just stopped caring. Are you okay? I will be, I said. I'm getting the firm back. That's what matters. And Mireia? I don't know what happens to her now, I said. That's between her and the consequences. Callum was quiet for a moment. I'm sorry, Dad. Don't be, I said. You didn't do anything wrong. We talked for a few more minutes before he had to go. When I hung up, I felt the weight of it all settle in. Not anger, not grief, just the quiet, heavy truth that family doesn't always mean loyalty. The next morning, I went to the office. I walked in through the front door like I'd done 1,000 times before, carrying my coffee, my laptop, my worn leather bag. The open area was quiet. A few people were at their desks, but most hadn't arrived yet. Thomas looked up when I walked in, relief clear on his face. Morning, Desmond. Morning, I said. I went to my desk and set my things down. The space looked the same. Scratched wood, old chair, stacks of files I'd never fully organized. But it felt different now, like I'd reclaimed something I thought was gone. At 9 o'clock, I called an all-staff meeting. Everyone gathered in the open area. Lena, Thomas, the consultants, the new hires Mireia had brought in. Some looked nervous. Some looked curious. I stood in front of them and kept it simple. As most of you know, there's been some confusion about the firm's leadership over the past few months. That confusion has been resolved. I'm back in full operational control. Mireia and Vaughn are no longer involved with the firm in any capacity. A few people glanced at each other. No one spoke. If you want to stay, you're welcome to stay, I said. If you want to leave, I understand. But as of today, this firm operates the way it always has, with integrity, transparency, and respect for the work we do. Nia Volker, the PR hire who'd been pushing Vaughn's narrative, raised her hand. What about the rebrand? The new direction? There is no rebrand, I said. We do compliance and operations consulting. We do it well. That's the direction. She looked uncomfortable. I'm not sure that aligns with what I was brought in to do. Then you're free to leave, I said. Not unkindly, but clearly. She packed her desk that afternoon. 3 others left over the next week. People who'd bought into Vaughn's vision and couldn't adjust to the reality. I didn't stop them. I didn't argue. I just let them go. The rest stayed, and slowly, carefully, we started rebuilding. By Monday afternoon, I had confirmation from 5 major clients that they were staying with the firm. Breyer Shue scheduled a call to discuss contract renewals. 2 vendors reached out to apologize for the confusion and confirm they'd continue working with us. Hamid sent over a full financial breakdown. The $6.3 million was accounted for, traced, documented. The regulatory review would take months, but the outcome was clear. Mireia and Vaughn had acted outside their authority, and there would be consequences. I didn't know what those consequences would look like yet. I didn't know if there would be lawsuits, or settlements, or criminal charges. That was for lawyers and regulators to decide. All I knew was that I had my firm back. That week, I went back to the storage facility one last time. I stood in front of Unit 347 and pulled the door up. The space looked the same: empty boxes, dusty air, the filing cabinet in the corner. I locked the cabinet and left the key inside. I didn't need it anymore. As I was leaving, the clerk at the desk called out, "Hey, you're Oren's son, right?" I stopped. "Yeah." "Your dad was a good guy," the clerk said. "He used to come in every 6 months to check on the unit. Made sure everything was in order. He said it was for you, for when you needed it." "He was right," I said. "He also left something for you," the clerk said. He pulled a small envelope out of a drawer. "He told me to give it to you if you ever came back after opening the cabinet." I took the envelope. It was thin, just a single sheet of paper inside. I didn't open it until I got home. When I did, I found one sentence in my father's handwriting. "I always knew you'd figure it out." I folded the paper and set it on the table beside the 9-word note. 2 messages from a man who'd spent his whole life preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. I thought about calling Mireya. I thought about asking her why. Why she'd chosen Vaughn over me. Why she'd believed his story instead of trusting what we'd built together. But I knew the answer wouldn't change anything. So I didn't call. Instead, I made coffee, opened my laptop, and started working on the client reports that had been piling up for weeks. Because that's what you do when you rebuild. You don't dwell. You don't wait for closure. You just keep moving forward, one careful step at a time. 2 weeks after the summit, Celine Crowell called me into her office. She had updates, legal, procedural, the kind of details that mattered in courtrooms but not in daily life. "The bank completed their audit," she said, sliding a document across the desk. "The full amount has been frozen pending resolution. Mireya and Vaughn can't access any of it." "What's the next step?" "The bank will likely pursue recovery," Celine said. "They'll work with regulators to determine if criminal charges are warranted. That's not your decision anymore. It's out of your hands." "Good," I said. "There's something else," Celine said. "Mireya's attorney reached out. They want to negotiate a settlement." I looked up. "What kind of settlement?" "They're offering to return a portion of the funds in exchange for you not pursuing further action." "How much?" $2 million, Celine said. I sat back in my chair. "That's less than a third of what they took." "I know," Celine said, "but her attorney is framing it as a good faith gesture. They're also claiming that some of the transfers were legitimate business expenses." "They weren't," I said. "Hamid traced every dollar. It all went to personal accounts and investments." "I believe you," Celine said. "But this is how these things go. They'll drag it out, claim ambiguity, hope you settle to avoid the cost of litigation." "What do you recommend?" Celine leaned forward. "You don't need the money back to survive. Your firm is stable. Your clients are staying. The regulatory review will continue regardless of whether you accept the settlement. So the question is, do you want closure? Or do you want to keep fighting?" I thought about it. I thought about Mireya, sitting in some lawyer's office, trying to negotiate her way out of what she'd done. I thought about Vaughn, probably coaching her through the strategy, still convinced he could spin his way to safety. "I don't want closure," I said. "I want accountability." Celine nodded. "Then we decline the settlement and let the process play out." "Do it," I said. She made a note. "One more thing. The regulatory agency wants to interview you. They're building a case, and they need your testimony." "When?" "Next week. I'll be there with you." I left Celine's office and drove back to the firm. The office felt different now, quieter, steadier, like it was settling back into its original rhythm. The staff who'd stayed were working, heads down, focused. No one was performing. No one was trying to prove anything. They were just doing the job. Lena stopped by my desk. Client call went well. Breyer's team confirmed the renewal. 3-year contract. Good, I said. What about the others? 4 confirmed. 2 are still evaluating. But no one's leaving because of the drama. They're leaving because of budget cuts on their end. That's normal, I said. We'll replace them. Lena hesitated. There's something else. Nia Volker posted something on social media. About the firm. About you. I looked up. What did she say? That you're vindictive. That you destroyed Mireya's career because you couldn't handle change. I closed my laptop. Does it matter? People are commenting, Lena said. Some are defending you, some aren't. Let them talk, I said. I'm not going to spend my time defending myself to strangers online. Lena nodded slowly. You're probably right. I know I'm right, I said. The work speaks for itself. The clients know the truth. That's all that matters. She left, and I went back to work. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and opened the email Hamid had sent me earlier in the day. It was a financial breakdown, assets recovered, accounts frozen, outstanding liabilities. The numbers were clear, methodical, exactly what I needed to see. The firm had lost $6.3 million, but the firm was still standing. Clients were staying. Revenue was steady. We'd survive. I thought about my father, about the hours he'd spent planning for this exact moment, building a safety net I didn't know I'd need. I thought about the 9 words he'd left me. The firm was always mine. Take it back today. He'd been right. Not because the firm had legally belonged to him, but because he'd understood something I hadn't. That ownership isn't just about contracts and shares. It's about who built it, who sustained it, who cared enough to fight for it when it mattered. The next week, I went to the regulatory agency's office for the interview. Celine was with me, calm and prepared. We sat in a small conference room with 2 investigators and a court reporter. They asked questions, lots of questions, about the timeline, the transfers, the approvals, the access changes. I answered each one carefully, methodically, the same way I approached everything. When did you first realize something was wrong? One investigator asked. When I saw the operating sweep notification, I said. $42,000 moved to an account I didn't recognize. And what did you do? I started documenting, I said. I pulled records, built timelines, tracked the pattern. Did you confront your daughter? No, I said. My father left me instructions. He said not to fight them in private. The investigator raised an eyebrow. Your father anticipated this? He prepared for it, I said. There's a difference. The interview lasted 3 hours. By the end, I was tired, but steady. Celine walked me out. You did well, she said. They have everything they need. What happens now? They'll continue the investigation. It'll take months. But based on what you've provided, I'd say the outcome is clear. And Mireya? Celine paused. That's not something I can predict. But she made choices. Now she has to live with them. I nodded and left. The following week, I got a message from an unknown number. I almost deleted it, but something made me open it. Dad, it's me. Can we talk? Mireya. I stared at the message for a long time. I thought about replying. I thought about what I'd say. But in the end, I just set the phone down and went back to work. Because some conversations don't change anything. Some apologies don't fix what's broken. And some people only reach out when they realize they've lost. I didn't block her number. I just didn't respond. By the end of the month, the firm had stabilized. Clients were renewing. Staff were productive. Revenue was steady. We weren't growing aggressively, but we were solid, sustainable, real. Thomas stopped by my desk one afternoon. We got a new inquiry. Mid-sized manufacturing company. They're looking for compliance consulting. Send me the details, I said. Already did, Thomas said. He paused. You know, a few months ago I thought this place was done. I thought we'd all be looking for new jobs by now. But you stayed, I said. Because I believed you'd figure it out, Thomas said. And you did. I didn't know how to respond to that, so I just nodded. That night, I went back to the storage facility one last time. I'd already cleared out most of the unit, but there were a few boxes left. I loaded them into my car and drove home. At the bottom of the last box, I found something I hadn't noticed before. A small photograph, faded and creased. It was my father and me, standing in front of the original office. I was 34, just starting out. He was in his 60s, quiet and steady, one hand on my shoulder. On the back, in his handwriting, it said, "You'll build something that lasts." I set the photo on my kitchen table, next to the 9-word note and the final message. 3 pieces of evidence that my father had always believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. And now, sitting in the quiet house, I realized he'd been right all along. 3 months after the summit, the regulatory agency completed their review. Cellini called me with the results. "They're moving forward with formal charges," she said. "Unauthorized transfers, breach of fiduciary duty, and financial misconduct." "Against both of them?" "Yes," Celine said. Maria signed off on the approvals. Vaughn executed the transfers. They're both liable. "What's the timeline?" "Months," Celine said. "Maybe longer. But the evidence is solid. The bank's cooperating. Hamid's records are airtight. This isn't going away." "Good," I said. "There's something else," Celine said. "The agency wants to recover the full amount. They're pursuing asset seizures. Bank accounts, property, investments, anything tied to the funds." "Will they get it all back?" "Most of it," Celine said. "But recovery takes time. You should prepare for a long process." I thanked her and hung up. The firm kept moving forward. We landed 2 new clients that month, both referrals from existing relationships. We hired a junior consultant to replace the staff who'd left. We rebuilt the internal systems Vaughn had disrupted. Slowly, carefully, the firm started to feel like mine again. I still didn't respond to Maria's message. She sent 2 more over the next few weeks, both short, both asking if we could talk. I read them, then set my phone down and kept working. Callum called one night. "Dad, I heard about the charges. Is it true?" "Yes," I said. "Do you think she'll go to trial?" "I don't know," I said. "That's up to her and her lawyer. Are you okay with all this?" I thought about it. I'm not happy about it, but I'm not losing sleep either. She made her choices. "Do you think she regrets it?" "Probably," I said. "But regret doesn't undo what she did." Callum was quiet for a moment. "I'm proud of you, Dad, for fighting back, for not just letting them take everything." "I didn't have a choice," I said. "You did," Callum said. "You could have walked away. A lot of people would have." "Your grandfather didn't raise me to walk away," I said. We talked for a while longer before he had to go. When I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Not pride, exactly, but something close. A quiet certainty that I'd done the right thing. 4 months after the summit, I got a call from Briar Shoe. "Desmond," she said, "I wanted to let you know. We're expanding our procurement division. We're going to need more consulting support. Are you interested?" "Absolutely," I said. "Good," Briar said. "I'll send over the details." "And Desmond?" "Yeah?" "I'm glad you fought for your firm," she said. "A lot of people wouldn't have." "I didn't do it for recognition," I said. "I did it because it was mine." "I know," Briar said. "That's why we're staying." We finalized the contract 2 weeks later. It was the largest deal the firm had landed in 3 years. Thomas was ecstatic. "This changes everything. We can hire more staff, expand the client base, actually grow." "Carefully," I said. "We grow carefully. No shortcuts. No promises we can't keep." "Of course," Thomas said. "The right way." "The only way," I said. 5 months after the summit, the asset recovery process began. The regulatory agency seized accounts, froze investments, and started tracking where the money had gone. Some of it had been spent: vacations, cars, luxury purchases. But most of it was still recoverable. Selene kept me updated. They're negotiating with Mireya's attorney. She's offering to cooperate in exchange for reduced penalties. What does that mean? She'll provide full documentation, testify if needed, and assist with recovery efforts. In exchange, they'll consider a plea arrangement. And Vaughn? He's fighting it, Selene said. His attorney is claiming he acted on Mireya's authority, that he didn't know the transfers were unauthorized. That's a lie, I said. I know, Selene said, but that's his strategy. Will it work? Probably not, Selene said. The evidence is too clear, but it'll drag things out. I didn't care how long it took. I'd already gotten what I needed. The firm was stable, the clients were staying, the work continued. 6 months after the summit, I received a formal notice from the regulatory agency. The investigation was complete. Charges were filed. Proceedings would begin in 3 months. I read the notice once, filed it in a folder, and went back to work. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and looked at the 3 pieces of paper my father had left me. The 9-word note, the final message, the photograph. I thought about the man who'd spent his life fixing machines and preparing for disasters. I thought about the quiet way he'd protected me, even after he was gone. And I realized that the greatest gift he'd given me wasn't the documents or the key or the storage unit. It was the belief that I could rebuild, that I could take what was broken and make it whole again, that I could fight back and win. 7 months after the summit, I walked into the hotel ballroom where it had all started. Another industry event, another crowd of consultants and vendors, another chance to network and rebuild relationships. But this time, I wasn't there to present. I was just there to work. Briar Shu found me near the coffee station. Desmond, good to see you. You too, I said. I heard about the charges, Briar said quietly. How are you holding up? I'm fine, I said. The firm's stable, that's what matters. People are talking about what happened, Briar said. Some of them are asking me questions. What do you tell them? The truth, Briar said, that you built something real and you fought to keep it. That's all I needed to do, I said. We talked for a few more minutes before she had to go. I stayed near the coffee station, watching the crowd, noticing who avoided eye contact and who didn't. Lena found me an hour later. I just ran into someone from Vaughn's old company. Apparently he's been trying to find consulting work. No one's hiring him. Good, I said. They asked me what happened, Lena said. I told them to look up the case. Did they? Right there on their phone, Lena said. Their face said everything. I didn't smile. I just nodded. That afternoon, I got a call from Selene. There's been a development. Mireya accepted the plea arrangement. She'll cooperate fully and provide restitution. In exchange, she'll avoid trial. What about Vaughn? He's still fighting, Selene said. But his attorney knows the case is weak. I expect he'll settle eventually. How much are they recovering? Approximately 5.1 million so far, Selene said. The rest is tied up in assets that are still being liquidated. So we'll get most of it back? Eventually, Selene said. But it'll take time. I can wait, I said. That night I sat at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. My email was full of the usual work: client updates, project reports, internal memos. Normal business, steady business. I thought about Mireya, about the plea arrangement, the restitution, the fact that she'd finally admitted what she'd done. I thought about calling her, but I still didn't know what I'd say, so I closed the laptop and went to bed. 2 weeks later, I got another message from her. This time, it was longer. Dad, I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know I'm sorry. I was wrong. Vaughn convinced me that we were building something better, that you were holding us back. I believed him. And I destroyed everything because of it. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did. And I'm sorry. I read the message 3 times. Then I set the phone down and didn't respond. Because some apologies come too late. Some damage can't be undone. And some relationships don't survive betrayal, no matter how sincere the regret. 8 months after the summit, the regulatory case moved to its final stage. Vaughn's attorney reached out to negotiate a settlement. He agreed to full restitution and accepted liability in exchange for avoiding trial. Celine called me with the news. It's over. They're both on record. The recovery process will continue, but the legal fight is done. How much did we recover in total? $5.8 million, Celine said. The remaining $500,000 is still tied up in assets that are harder to liquidate, but the agency is confident they'll recover most of it eventually. Good, I said. There's one more thing, Celine said. The agency wants to know if you'd like to pursue additional civil damages. For what? Emotional distress, reputational harm, business disruption. You'd have a strong case. I thought about it. No, I said. I got what I needed. The firm's stable. The clients are staying. That's enough. Are you sure? I'm sure, I said. I'm done fighting. Celine was quiet for a moment. Your father would be proud of you. I hope so, I said. I hung up and sat at my desk, staring at the scratched wood and the stacks of files. The firm was mine again. Fully, legally, undeniably mine. And it felt right. That week, I called an all-staff meeting. Everyone gathered in the open area. Lena, Thomas, the consultants, the new hires. I wanted to give you an update, I said. The legal case is resolved. The firm's finances are stable. We're moving forward. A few people clapped. Thomas smiled. We're also expanding, I said. We landed 2 new contracts this quarter. We're hiring another consultant and a junior project manager. We're growing, but we're growing the right way. Lena raised her hand. What about the rebrand? Are we changing the name? No, I said. We're Kellan Consulting Group. That's who we've always been. That's who we'll stay. Thomas grinned. Back to basics. Exactly, I said. The meeting ended, and people went back to work. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. There were client emails to answer, project reports to review, proposals to draft. Normal work, steady work, the kind of work I'd been doing for 15 years, and for the first time in months, it felt like enough. That night, I went back to the storage facility one last time. Unit 347 was empty now. No boxes, no filing cabinet, no envelope. Just a bare concrete floor and a single light bulb overhead. I stood in the doorway and looked at the space where my father had left me the tools to rebuild. Then I pulled the door down, locked it, and walked away. 9 months after the summit, I was sitting in my office when my phone buzzed. A notification from the bank. Deposit received, restitution payment, $5,800,000. I stared at the screen. $5.8 million. Almost everything they'd taken, returned in full. I set the phone down and leaned back in my chair. The firm was whole again, not just legally, not just structurally, but financially. We had the resources to rebuild, to expand, to keep the promises I'd made. I thought about my father's 9-word note. The firm was always mine. Take it back today. I'd done it. Not with rage, not with violence, not with shortcuts. I'd done it the way he'd taught me, carefully, methodically, through systems and procedures and patience. And I'd won. Tomas walked by my desk. You okay? I'm fine, I said. Better than fine. Good, Tomas said, because we have a new client proposal due Friday, and I need your input. Send it over, I said. He walked away, and I opened my laptop. Back to work. Back to normal. Back to building something that lasts. And in the quiet of my office, surrounded by the hum of productivity and the steady rhythm of a firm that refused to die, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Not because I'd destroyed my enemies, not because I'd gotten revenge, but because I'd taken back what was mine, protected what mattered, and proven that trust and preparation and quiet competence will always outlast arrogance and greed. My father had been right all along. You don't fix a machine after it breaks. You prepare for the breakdown before it happens. And when the moment comes, you don't hesitate. You just take it back. I closed my laptop, stood up, and walked out of my office. The firm was buzzing with activity. People working, phones ringing, projects moving forward. My firm, my work, my life. And no one could take that away again.